You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Oh yeah, baby, that's lovely.
Good morning, it's March the 14th, and welcome to Psychedelics Cannabis Education and News here at paceradio.net. Good morning, Glenn.
Good morning, Al. How are you?
Not bad, and yourself? It's been a while since we've seen you.
It has been a while. I'm losing my tan already.
Yeah. So how was the trip?
The trip was absolutely amazing. Every single time I've been in that country, it's just great. Costa Rica, absolutely love it. One day I hope to live there.
Oh, yeah. I know we saw some fantastic photos of the beaches and sunsets and everything that you were posting.
Had a lot of really good restaurants right on the beach, which I absolutely love. You know, even if the food's not the best in the world, it's just the atmosphere is just amazing, right?
Right, exactly. Well, you know, things haven't changed much around here. I can tell you that the dog always wants out just as the show gets started. And as you know, I walked her just before we got together at 9:30.
Yeah.
And now she's at the door. So we'll get the first story started, and then I'll go deal with her, and we'll go from there. All right?
Okay. Yeah.
All right, here we go. First up, headline says Kamala Harris will host a marijuana reform event with Fat Joe. This comes from NBC News.
The roundtable hosted by the vice president will be the administration's first public event on the issue since President Joe Biden talked about in his State of the Union speech. The vice president Kamala Harris will hold the administration's first public event on cannabis reform this week after President Joe Biden addressed the issue as one of his priorities in last week's State of the Union address. Harris will convene a roundtable discussion in the West Wing featuring Grammy-nominated artist Fat Joe, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, and individuals who received pardons for prior cannabis convictions.
Harris.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm back. Yeah, I made it back. Harris' main portfolio includes reproductive health care, gun violence, and voting rights, but she has consistently amplified criminal justice reform since her years as district attorney in California. In his State of the Union address, Biden said that he had directed his cabinet to review the federal classification of marijuana, adding that he is also expunging thousands of convictions for the mere possession because no one should be jailed for simply using. Just note there, that's only federal end of things, not state crime.
Yep. We have another story later on about the states, or at least one of them. Biden's comments were notable, marking the first time he spoke about the effort to reschedule cannabis since he directed agencies in October 2022 to examine its classification within the Drug Enforcement Agency. It's also the first time Biden mentioned the drug during a speech as critical as an election year. Two aides close to the vice president and an additional source familiar with her role said Harris will continue to bring awareness to the issue in the coming months with events that highlight expungements, especially as the re-election campaign seeks the support of critical young voters and voters of color.
Friday's engagement will build on the vice president's efforts to uplift the historic actions the Biden-Harris administration has taken to ensure everyone has access to opportunity, including by making the criminal justice system more just. This will continue in the weeks ahead and months to come, a White House official says. It goes on to say the Biden campaign launched a core part of that outreach effort in its Students for Biden-Harris rollout earlier this week. While young people identify plenty of issues that are most important to them, including abortion access, the economy, and gun violence, cannabis reform is also a significant concern.
According to a national poll commissioned by the Coalition for Cannabis Scheduling Reform, the overwhelming majority of 18 to 25-year-old voters or likely voters, 65% expressed support for Biden's efforts to reschedule cannabis, and 70% of Americans support federal cannabis legalization, the highest percentage ever. The White House announced its major initiatives on the topic, including directing agencies to evaluate rescheduling the drug just weeks before the 2022 midterm elections.
But Biden said in a statement that too many lives have been upended because of our failed approach to marijuana. It's time we right these wrongs. This will be interesting. In August, the Department of Health and Human Services formally recommended that the Department of Justice reclassify cannabis from Schedule 1 to 3, for the first time acknowledging the medical benefits of cannabis, which has been in the same category as heroin and LSD since the Controlled Substances Act was enacted in 1971. Well, interesting about LSD. We have news on that all the time. Drugs classified under Schedule 1 are substances that officials say have no accepted form of medical use and have a high potential for abuse. Marijuana ranks higher on in the CSA than fentanyl and cocaine, despite 40 states and Washington, D.C. having legalized some form of cannabis or other recreational medical use.
The DEA has been conducting a review of the HHS recommendation for months, but has yet to issue an opinion, though one is expected this spring, according to two sources with knowledge. Once that opinion is issued, a public review period is expected, a process that could take up to 60 days. The gridlock Congress could also make some progress on cannabis reform this year, with Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer telling reporters last week that the bipartisan Safer Banking Act, a bill that would expand access to traditional banking and financial institutions for legal cannabis businesses, could get a vote on the floor before November election. Good luck on that one.
Yeah, good luck on it. But, all we can do is cross our fingers that there's more to this going on, that hopefully something big is announced going into their election in order to...
They seem to be so gridlocked down there right now that
I know.
Who knows what's getting him through at all?
Well, it's hope that the administration just comes out and say we want to legalize cannabis. We're gonna make that part of our platform.
I hope they do. I hope they do. I doubt it, but I hope they do.
Yeah. Same here. Same here. Fingers crossed, though. Just end all this. All right.
One day, Al.
Yes. One day. On to our next story. Headline on it says, City Councillor says regulatory framework needed for psychedelics in Vancouver. And this comes from Press Progress.
One Vancouver City Councillor says it's time for the city to consider a regulatory framework for psychedelics after a mushroom dispensary had its business license reinstated during a council hearing last week. The dispensary's license was suspended last year and was the subject of a police search and seizure in November. Other stores have also been raided by Vancouver police as part of an investigation into the sale of illicit psychedelic drugs from storefronts throughout the city.
Last week's hearing involved 3 council members, including Councillor Pete Fry, who says the conversation has led to further discussion about psychedelics in Vancouver. He says this conversation did serve as a catalyst for us to consider bringing forward a motion to explore how we can implement a regulatory framework similar to what was done with marijuana.
Although the hearing doesn't necessarily mean the shop's activities are legal, Fry says that there are a number of shops existing in Vancouver that operate in a legal gray area, similar to cannabis shops prior to legalization. However, Vancouver Mayor Ken Sim took issue with the council's decision to reinstate the dispensary's license at the hearing.
Kim accused Councillor Fry and Councillor Adrian Carr of participating activism on matters beyond the jurisdiction of the city of Vancouver. Fry says the activism has historically had a place within the city of Vancouver.
At the time that marijuana was illegal, there was a proliferation of marijuana retail shops throughout Vancouver, and the city of Vancouver came up with a regulatory framework years before cannabis was actually legalized in Canada, Fry said. There is a role for that activism from the city. Fry adds that he completely disagrees with the politicized discourse around the drugs being pushed by Sim's ABC party and other right-wing actors in the province.
Fry says there was no evidence of public complaints with this business. In fact, this investigation only initiated after an opposition MLA from Surrey had brought this up, and then the next day there was an investigation launched. I think it just harkens back to this arc conservative drug war hysteria that we've seen time and time again from these right-wing actors and the ABCs showing their true colors by equating a war on drugs to public safety.
Well, Fry says a motion will simply initiate a debate about potentially exploring a regulatory framework for psychedelics. He hopes that more weight is given to the fact psychedelics have become popular in the city of Vancouver. There's a reason so many shops have popped up. There's a whole trend towards microdosing mushrooms and recreational psychedelic use that is growing in popularity, and we're seeing young people who are drinking less.
Oh, you still there, Glenn? He went quiet. He's not muted. All right, I'll just continue where he was. We're in a gray area around a lot of this stuff. The least of which is because of the provincial decriminalization of a Class 1 drugs, including Class 3 MDMA. I couldn't disagree more with what ABC are putting out there as a message. Mark Haddon, the adjacent professor at UBC School of Population and Public Health, says the regulatory gray area with psychedelics in Vancouver has highlighted that prohibition does not work. Prohibition is a failed social policy and has been failed for a long period of time. It doesn't do any good. In fact, it does a significant amount of harm, Hayden says. And people get put in jail. We as a society need to approach drugs in a completely different way. Regulating and controlling them makes a whole lot more sense because you can actually do that. You can effectively prohibit, but you can regulate. Hayden says the applying a regulatory framework to psychedelics is a wise decision given the outcome of cannabis legalization. Vancouver played a leadership role in creating this policy of legalization of cannabis, which has only done us good. Now we get tax revenues from it, and there's none of the harms of prohibition, which are multitudes, Hayden says. It is wise to take the win and the success story of cannabis and apply it to other substances. In addition, Hayden says that responding with police interventions are a costly way of engaging with people who use drugs. He continues with, the criminal justice system is a very expensive way to engage with people, so that produces social harms. It's sucking money out of the taxpayers' wallets that could go to the schools and education and health interventions. Now, according to Hayden, research has shown that the use of psychedelics is associated with a reported positive impact on health. And I can tell you from the stories that we're seeing here on the Pace News Psychedelics Cannabis Educational News, I got to agree with Hayden. In the U.S. National Health Safety Database, the people who reported using psychedelics were generally more mentally healthy and had lower suicidality and lower rates of depression than the general population. So the idea that we're targeting these people with police interventions when generally they are healthier and having social benefit is actually really unwise thing for our society to do. A wise society would say, how do we maximize the benefits or minimize the harms? And one way of maximize the benefits of these substances is allowing people to use them. Well, there you go. Still there, I see, Glenn, but we can't hear you. We still can't hear you. Maybe leave the room and come back. Leave the room and come back. There he goes. There he goes, Glenn. That's too bad. We'll get him back. And I'll just continue. I'll just keep going on to the next story. And when I hear him come in, we'll get him back to join the broadcast. So now we're going to head to France. Because over there in France, what's going on is that they have decided that the French authorities confirm flower will not be included in medical cannabis program. Yes, that's what it said. No flower will be included in medical cannabis program. I know Glenn really wanted to get in on this one. So he's back. Let's see if we can hear him. Are you still there, Glenn? Can we hear you?
I'm here. I'm here. I can hear you.
All right, good stuff. And look at the story I got on the screen. The French authorities confirm flower will not be included in the medical cannabis program. What's your first initial thoughts on that?
It makes me laugh. I don't understand it at all. I'm kind of flabbergasted. I don't know how you can include that. That's the first thing everybody tries. That's a thing that most people that I know use. I don't understand it. Let's read the story and we'll find out here.
Let's go. Okay.
The
Go
French
ahead.
National Medicine Safety Agency has confirmed that flowers will not be included in its upcoming generalized medical cannabis framework. While not wholly unexpected, the abrupt nature and failure of the ANSM to provide any viable alternative to patients currently dependent on cannabis flower has sparked outrage.
The confirmation will also come as a disappointment to French cannabis businesses, which will be distinctly aware of the dominance of medical cannabis flower in markets across Europe. It comes as more details of how France's long-awaited medical cannabis generalization are released following years of delays and uncertainty for patients and businesses alike.
In late February, the ANSM published a progress update on the last year of experimentation and the arrival of cannabis-based medicines. It marked the first official update on the upcoming transition period and eventual generalization of medical cannabis since a last-minute amendment was passed last year, ensuring that patients would retain access to treatment indefinitely.
This amendment suggested that only oral solutions would be pursued, but did not confirm that flower would not be part of the program moving forward. Well, that earlier part of it only oral solutions will be pursued. Pretty well sums it up.
It does.
Yeah. In a public update in a coming letter to healthcare professionals, the ANSM confirmed this is no uncertain terms.
Medicines in the form of flowers, flowering tops to be inhaled, will cease to be made available in the coming weeks. Prescribing doctors must therefore gradually stop flower treatment for their patients and not initiate new treatments with this form. As of March 26th, cannabis flower will cease being provided by the program's sole flower supplier, Aurora. And once reserve stocks have been exhausted, patients will have no legal route to secure medical cannabis flower. I don't understand it at all.
Although only around 100 patients were being prescribed cannabis flower as part of the pilot program, the abrupt stop of their treatment and lack of alternative medication has sparked the outrage among French medical community. I guess so.
Dr. Nicholas Arthur, who was a key part of the pilot program, told, what surprises us as doctors is the brutality of the decision. We thought we would have time to gradually stop therapy. Stopping a patient treatment taken for several years cannot be done over 2 weeks, but over several months. This could have significant impact on the pain felt by patients. Of course it will.
Yeah, exactly. And it is understood that during the transition period between April and 2025, where the generalization will launch in earnest, the pilot scheme will be supplied by existing stock reserves. Now, according to Paris-based cannabis consultant Ager Associates, France's pilot scheme has been structured against the use of flowers through different means since day one.
Its CEO and co-founder Benjamin Alexander Jeanroy told Business of Cannabis that not only were the vaporization devices required to consume flower more expensive than oils, but the complex nature of prescribing flower worked against its wider usage. What? The complex nature of prescribing flower. How the hell is it complex to prescribe it?
We've been doing it here for 20 years.
Yeah, prescribers are much less used to handling those kinds of products than oils. So the training that prescribers need to go through would be much more time consuming and expensive. It's much more complex product. So the emphasis was heavily on the side of non-flower prescriptions.
Yeah, I think back to when I first asked my family doctor 20 years ago about getting access to medical cannabis, and what the first thing he said is, "I can't guarantee you dosage that each joint is going to be the same."
Yeah.
And with forcing people under the oils, that's what'll happen. They'll be able to do that.
I was told that he wouldn't sign my papers because it was immoral.
Oh, wow. Things have changed, eh? The lack of uptake in the pilot has been cited as a reason for omission for the generalized framework. The government, in its response to questions regarding Flower's future, sought to shift the blame on Aurora, stating it is explained by the wish of the manufacturer not to continue to supply the products. So why don't you go get another supplier? Like, oh. Go ahead, Glenn. Uh-oh, Glenn. We can't hear you. We can't hear you again. I don't know what's going on there, buddy. No. All right, he's left. He'll come back. He'll come back. The ANSA's announcement also provided more information on how the generalized scheme will develop. Any patient who have been included in the pilot scheme since March 27th of this year will be able to continue their treatment with medical cannabis, and treatment will continue to be provided according to the same methods as before. However, no one will be able to join the pilot after this date. Furthermore, new healthcare professionals will be able to be trained to participate in the experiment and support their patients. Crucially, the ANSM says that drugs that are to be included in the generalization in 2025 must have obtained authorization issued by the ANSM no later than December 31st of 2024. So there you go. That's a story from Business of Canada, and those poor people over there in France, they're not going to get their buds, for Glenn.
I don't understand it. I mean, that's what I used for the longest time, and I just switched myself over to a different product. But I smoked cannabis for years, and that's how I used it because it was simple for me.
Yeah. It's
And I don't understand why they only had one supplier. Well,
yeah.
this is the whole country.
And why not get another? Why not get another supplier if one drops out? Like, it just It
they
sounds
said
like
it
a
was
lame
more
excuse to me.
difficult, and that's really weird to me. That's the most simple form.
Yeah. All right, there we go. On to the next story. Ohio bill would fund replacing drug dogs after legalization. This comes to us from Entrepreneur.
Ohio is considering a bill to fund the retirement and replacement of police canines trained to detect cannabis following the state's legalization reform, aiming to use cannabis tax revenue to support the transition and ensure law enforcement adaptability. The bill aims to address a common issue faced by states that decriminalize or legalize adult use cannabis, as police dogs cannot be simply untrained after being taught to detect and alert a certain odor. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. House Bill 396 is primarily sponsored by Reps Sean Brennan and Josh Williams, but also counts dozens of other lawmakers in the Ohio House of Representatives as co-sponsors. The bipartisan bill proposes offsetting the cost of replacing and retiring drug detection canines by using some of the state's adult use cannabis tax revenue. Police departments would be able to apply for grants of up to $20,000 per dog that needs replacing.
Wow.
There's a quote here from Rep. Brennan, says that the fact that we're now going to need 300 canines like overnight in Ohio, the demand for dogs and for training is going to be a premium. Mm-hmm.
How come they need to replace all 300? If these were all trained to detect just cannabis, what are they going to be detecting now?
I don't know.
Wouldn't it?
And I don't know if we're going to find out.
Wouldn't it be better if they had like a maybe 100 to do something else.
Yeah, 300 dogs, eh? That's a lot of dogs.
The cost of acquiring and training a new drug detection dog can easily reach up to $20,000. Former K9 handler and North College Hill Police Jay Manning said in a WCPO report. With the state's new legalization policy, some K9 officers will be able to retire, but many will need to either be rehomed or move to another state where they can continue working, the report said. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, Republican, recently urged lawmakers to let the state's medical cannabis dispensaries begin catering to adult use customers after the voter-approved legalization policy took effect.
There you go. That's it.
I find it weird that they have 300 dogs and they're getting 300 more, because if they're not detecting cannabis and they needed 300,
what are they detecting?
Yeah, what are they detecting now? Like 300 still.
Bombs? Yeah, I don't know.
But wouldn't that require 100 or 50 instead of 300?
Well, see, maybe certain, like the dogs can only be trained to one scent.
Yeah.
And one smell. And,
so how many dogs did they have?
Yeah.
Well, they had these cannabis sniffing dogs. How many dogs did they have sniffing other substances?
Yeah, and why do they have to replace them if it's only cannabis? Why not just?
Yeah, it's weird to me. Sounds strange to me.
Dog. Yeah. So, all right, and to the next headline, and this will be the last one before we go to break. This comes to us from Politico. Headline says Massachusetts governor proposes sweeping marijuana pardons.
Boston Governor Maura Healey on Wednesday proposed a blanket pardon of misdemeanor cannabis possession convictions in Massachusetts, in what she describes as the broadest action taken by a governor to forgive past cannabis crimes since President Joe Biden handed down federal pot pardons. Haley's move to wipe out all past adult court misdemeanor convictions for possession of marijuana comes 7 years after the state legalized cannabis. The pardons will be mostly automatic, she said, and could potentially clear the charge from hundreds of thousands of people's records.
All right.
7 years.
Haley says that the reason we do this is simple. Justice requires it.
Yeah.
Healey's proposal still needs approval by the state's governor's council, which is comprised of all Democrats and has a record of backing Haley's past requests for clemency for certain individuals. 4 of the 7 current members have already expressed support for the pardons in reviews with Politico ahead of Haley's announcement.
And Biden granted a pardon to all people convicted of simple cannabis possession under federal law back in 2022, saying in a statement at the time that sending people to prison for possessing cannabis has upended too many lives and incarcerated people for conduct that many states no longer prohibit. He urged governors to take similar action for state offenses. Healey did not put a hard timeline on when or how quickly pardons will be issued in Massachusetts, saying only that she intends for the process of going through people's records to be operational as soon as there is a vote by the governor's council. State officials said it could take months to update people's criminal records. People who need faster proof of the pardon will be able to request a certificate.
The broad pardons represent somewhat of a reversal for Healey, who had opposed legalizing cannabis when the question went before voters on the 2016 ballot. Then the state's attorney general, she had raised concerns about drug trafficking and about the potential mental health effects for young people. Hopefully, Haley said on Wednesday that when she was asked about her past, she says, hopefully people want a governor who is willing to evolve. We all grow with more understanding.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah.
Healey cast the pardons as a way of reducing disparities in the state's criminal justice system and of removing barriers to housing and jobs for something that no longer cause for arrest today. The move has won support from top Democrats and law enforcement officials in the state. Healey unveiled her plans with Andrea Campbell, the state's first Black female attorney general, the state Senate president, and the head of the Massachusetts Chiefs of Police Associations by her side.
Looks like she's got support. President Biden urged governors to take action in their own states, and once again, Massachusetts is leading the nation as the first state in this country to answer that call. Yeah, it's too bad it's taking this long, just even for one.
Yeah.
Now, other states have already moved to pardon or expunge the records of people arrested for low-level cannabis-related crimes In 2022, then Oregon Governor Kate Brown moved to pardon roughly 47,000 adults convicted of simple marijuana possession. Missouri courts have cleared more than 100,000 charges after voters in 2022 passed a ballot measure legalizing cannabis and also included an automatic expungement provision. Illinois wiped out nearly 500,000 cannabis convictions under a law requiring the automatic expungement of some felony cannabis-related arrests records by the start of 2025. Go ahead, Glenn, and finish that off, and I'm going to go let the dog in.
Healy said she chose pardons over expungement because only the former was within her power as governor. I've got to execute on what I have the power to execute on, which is a pardon, she said. And that's the end of the story. So I think I really appreciate that she has changed her mind. I think that's a very smart thing to do. And I'm glad they're going ahead with it. I'm just surprised it took 7 years. Yeah.
And well, you know, I've always said when the medical end of things, seeing is believing. And since 2016, you know, she's been able to see.
It's a big change for someone like that, you know.
Yeah.
It has to do with votes, I would guarantee.
All righty, time for us to take a break. Time to get medicated. Glenn and I'll be right back after a session. You're watching Psychedelics and Cannabis Education and News here on paceradio.net. You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net. Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
Are you looking to get your medical cannabis grow license? Limestone City Hydroponics can help patients through the process of obtaining their license to grow medical cannabis. What's that? You don't have a doctor. If you meet the medical criteria, Limestone City Hydroponics has a nurse practitioner who can assess and provide medical cannabis prescriptions. What are you waiting for? Contact Limestone City Hydroponics at limestonecityhydroponics.ca or call them at 613-548-0420.
What do you find at paceradio.net? People advocating cannabis education.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Cannabis edibles are an effective way to manage pain and other ailments, especially when you deal with your trusted partner, Legacy 420, in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory. You see, we lab test every product on site to ensure proper dosage every time, which is critical when consuming cannabis edibles. All Legacy 420 edibles are made by our classically trained baker and chocolatier, and we also have super tasty vegan options.
Our baker has been in the industry for 25 years. She's also a chocolatier. Everything from savory to sweet, your chocolate bars, brownies, butter tarts, you name it, we make it.
Talk to our knowledgeable Cannatex about our incredible variety available. Give your trusted partners a call. Legacy 420 out on your road.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net. And you're watching Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News. Well, Glenn, we've got 4 stories there. And we're going to be, talking about, some hemp products and stuff. So we'll see what comes up. This next story here, which comes to us from StratCan, the headline says, Kelowna cannabis store takes 1 week suspension for failure to ID minor.
Cannabis store in Kelowna, BC will have to close for a week in April after an employee was alleged to have sold cannabis to a minor. The minor worked for BC's Liquor and Cannabis Regulation Branch as part of the province's Minor as Agents program.
The penalty for such an offense is a minimum of a $7,000 fine or closing the business for 7 days. The store, Prime Cannabis, opted for the 7 days, scheduled to begin on April the 3rd. The incident occurred during an LCRP inspection on November the 30th, 2023. Following standard procedure for such a visit, an adult inspector conducted an in-store risk assessment before giving the 16-year-old minor agent the clearance to enter the store.
The minor entered the store and purchased a single pack of cannabis-infused gummies, paying cash. The employee working at the time did not check her ID. Upon leaving the store, the minor handed the product to one of the 2 adult LCRB agents. The other agent re-entered the store to inform the employee that they had just sold cannabis to a minor, an offense under BC's regulations. In their defense, the owner of Prime Cannabis, which has 2 other locations in addition to the Kelowna store, one in West Kelowna and one in Cranbrook, said they have internal policies instructing employees to check IDs. However, the March 6th ruling concluded that the store's owner had not taken enough steps to ensure employees properly followed such rules.
One oversight noted in the ruling was the lack of written checklists that can demonstrate proof of the consent of in-store training and the time spent on various topics. I note the absence of written documentation, no training checklists, no written quizzes, no printed text messages about ongoing reminders, states the final ruling. A written checklist is particularly important when staff in the 3 stores are being trained by different people. Signing off on a checklist by both of the trainer and the trainee can demonstrate the topics were followed at the time spent on each. I did training when I was working, and we always had to sign a document, and the employee signed the document stating that they were trained on it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
20 years ago, right?
Yeah. The licensee can apply for reconsideration of the compliance order within 30 days of receiving a copy of the ruling. Prime Cannabis is not the first cannabis store to be caught up in the MAPS program. In February of this year, another cannabis store in Kelowna was issued a $7,000 fine for failing to check the ID of a minor in the BC government's program. The target inspection was in July 2023.
BC is sometimes more lenient in its rulings. In a case heard in 2023, it was found that a cannabis retailer was not responsible when an employee failed to check the ID of a customer. This was because the store demonstrated that it had an extensive training program in place. Exactly. While the employee was fired for their oversight, a retailer in that instance did not have to face a $7,000 penalty or shut down the store for 7 days.
Prime Cannabis takes full ownership over our mistake of not IDing and serving a minor, said Rob Anderson, the owner of Prime Cannabis, in an email to StratCan. We take IDing very seriously, and we have increased our minimum age to ID to 40 years old. We self-audit ourselves regularly through secret shoppers. Ultimately, there is no excuse, and we own our mistake. We regret the inconvenience we will cause our customers not being able to provide them with product during the week of closure. We hope our customers will continue to support us, and we'll be offering a 10% discount the entire week of reopening after serving our license suspension. I agree with this. I think this is a pretty good thing.
Yeah, they're gonna ID 3/4 of their customers or half of their customers because of going up to the age of 40. But he doesn't mention anything about updating their procedures, in-house procedures, to make sure that the training is done properly.
I think maybe they should contact this other one that didn't get the fine for doing the same thing and find out what they're doing. What's their program to train people?
Yeah.
It's just like the liquor store. I mean, you have to ask for ID. If you're not going to ask me probably, but you're going to ask my 18-year-old son.
Oh yeah. So, all righty. On to the next story. This one comes to us from Entrepreneur. Headline says that Minnesota sets new hemp flower regulations after samples test over limit.
As the Minnesota cannabis industry awaits a possible launch in 2025, officials have warned hemp product retailers that inspectors will begin examining their hemp flower products to make sure they do not exceed 0.3% Delta-9 THC potency limits. Minnesota cannabis regulators have unveiled new regulations on the sale of hemp flower products, the Minnesota Post reports.
The rules were set out on Thursday by the Office of Cannabis Management. The agency's interim director, Charlene Brenner, described the effort as an interagency agreement that will include contracting a private testing lab. The new rules come after products purchased from the Twin Cities hemp retailer tested at 29.99% total THC, including 1.1% of the Delta-9, so which is more than 3 times the legal Delta-9 limit, the report says. We are starting to contact retailers as we speak to talk about inspections, Brenner says.
Yeah. Minnesota legalized adult use cannabis possession and consumption in August 2023, but the state's regulated cannabis marketplace has yet to launch. Of course, lawmakers had previously legalized the sale of low-dose cannabis edibles and other products, and the hemp products described in the report were purchased under that limited market. Officials said last year they expect the state's regulated adult use market to launch sometime in 2025, but Brenner recently conceded that she wasn't certain about the time.
There you go.
2 years from legalization to launch.
Yeah. I know it takes, it can't be something that's done overnight. Well, they sort of did that in Thailand. And, Thailand has changed their ways.
They're trying to walk it back.
Correct.
I don't know how successful that's going to be, but they are trying to walk it back. And they were one of the most draconian countries when it came to penalties for cannabis before they did this. So I don't know. They went from one extreme to the other.
Well, yeah, they have, because they elected a new government, and the new government's platform included just making cannabis available for medical use. Recreational is going out the door.
Yep.
So, yeah. Change the government. That's all it took. Change the way procedures work. All right. On to our next story. This one comes to us from Stratcan. The headline says, "The changing landscape of Canadian cannabis events." Glenn, you got a little bit of experience. You were involved for a little bit there at Treating Yourself at their event back in the early days. So it'd be interesting to sort of compare that as you go through this. The experience.
That was I loved those events. I thought they were just amazing, those events.
Oh, yeah.
And I missed them.
Yeah.
If you walk into a cannabis-focused event today, it might not look or smell like the massive conferences that spread up soon after legalization in the late 2010s. In fact, you might not be stepping into a conference room at all. From summer camp getaways to outdoor fairs featuring spike ball tournaments and consumption lounges, cannabis events in Canada have taken a sharp turn from the frothy and shoulder-to-shoulder conferences held in massive conference centers. With contraction and reduced spending also seeping into the LP's budgets, events aren't as bustling as they used to be.
Yeah, he mentions the late 2010s. As you recall, the Treating Yourself Expo was in the early 2010s, before its time.
Yeah.
At the Grow Conference and Expo in cities such as Toronto and Edmonton, audiences sizes have dwindled to a third of what they used to be pre-pandemic. A sprawling conference known to connect cannabis growers and business-to-business and producers. These events have also lowered prices year after year for booths, says Randy Rowe, founder and CEO of Grow Up. First, the pandemic killed our momentum, he says in an interview. Then later, we saw brands realize that there was so much cannabis supply and not enough POs, and they slashed their budgets, meaning they didn't come to as many shows as they did before.
To cite one provincial example, Ontario LPs have endured an 18% decline in revenue since 2019. At Grow Up Events, who is behind each booth, has also changed over the past 5 years, says Rowe. Until 2020, most exhibitors were ancillary businesses such as CRM and fertilizer companies. But now brands have joined the fray. We want growers to meet dispensaries and to meet brands too, says Rowe. And I remember a cool story that happened at our events where a BC grower met a brand who ended up buying 2 kilos of his cannabis right on the spot. Nice.
Hope he didn't walk out with it. All Grow Up events offer an indulgence that you wouldn't have seen in 2019. Age-gated outdoor consumption lounges that don't serve alcohol. Well, we had a 4,600 square foot lounge, vapor lounge.
I remember I tried all kinds of bongs and vaporizers that I had never even seen before, and it was amazing.
I know, eh? Wasn't that cool? Yeah, 4,600 square foot vapor lounge. It was great. Yeah. That kind of space is also a key facet of Kind Magazine's summer and winter fairs, known as elevated cannabis events, which feature more experimental activations, which are what is usually seen at major events such as at the Lift Expo.
At the Toronto Kind Summer and Winter Fairs in 2023, taking over a parking lot in downtown Toronto, more than 45,000 attendees walked through the doors, largely a mix of bud tenders, brand owners, and attendees, says Nicole Wolf, Chief Experience Officer at Kind Media and Events. Wolf says, our events are focused on the experimental. You won't see us use a typical convention center. Instead, we try to elevate the experience to build out thematic opportunities for brands. And we encourage our partners to think through how they can come to life beyond a booth and chairs.
I've been to a couple of events, a summer event and a winter event. And this picture here, that was location of the year that I went to a winter event. There, obviously, these people were in shorts, so it's summer at this time. But yeah, I've been there. Yep.
And did you enjoy it? Was it different?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Had a good time. We actually covered it on CBG TV. That was one of our early. Was it even? Well, it was a combo. It went out on the Pace Radio Network, and then we re-released it on the CBG end of things. So, to continue with the story, it says that she adds how the Kind fairs, which are going to Vancouver on April 11th, took inspiration from music festivals, where brand partners have the ability to build awareness and loyalty with the consumer base they're looking for. Spike ball tournaments, basketball courts, DJs, food trucks, and glass-blowing demos are part of that casual, fun-oriented nuance of the Kind fairs that Wolf says is a key differentiator and evolution from what cannabis consumers typically see in an event.
Would also Mark's Kind events as an outlier from past cannabis events are educational cannabis samples available for those in the industry, not everyday attendees. More trade shows offer that kind of sampling, such as Grow Up events. Rowe notes, brands want ROI and having a presence at events, and giving away samples to potential clients is part of that. Imagine going to a car dealer and never having a test drive of the car you want to buy. Very true.
Yeah. Other cannabis events want to stay as far away as possible from the conference buildings and booths. The Blunts and Beans Collective in Red Deer, Alberta is now in its third year managing Camp Canna, a 3-day event on grounds near Pine Lake, Alberta, offering a stigma-free, fun, and engaging environment. Fall levels of consumers. Camp Canna could be considered an adult summer camp with cannabis threaded through the activities, says Alexis Dixon, a co-founder of Blunts and Beans. And just to let you know, CBG TV is involved at Can Expo this year at the Intercare building in a week's time. And on the floor, Camp Canada will be there, and people will be able to learn about them as well. Camp Canada is hosting an event right here in October, or not October, right here in Ontario, and I believe it's in June, but I don't guarantee me on that. I just know that, they're coming here. We did an interview with them. Take a look at it. You'll see it on behind the scenes on the CBG TV, Facebook, and YouTube pages.
Nice.
Let's see. We saw how consumer-focused events and tourism was missing from the Canadian cannabis scene, says Dixon, adding how they have enjoyed a 238% year-over-year growth in ticket sales.
And Camp Canada features yoga sessions, slow-pitch baseball tournaments, live music, and open consumption, all in the hope of creating a supportive and passionate community that continues to come back to our events year after year, says Dickinson. The camps have been such a success, she decided to launch the first Camp Canada in Ontario near the Haliburton Highlands on May 31st to June 2nd.
There you go.
Yep.
I thought June. It's pretty cool. It's a couple of days, eh? The next step for many of these events is not just to attract more attendees, but also non-cannabis sponsors. Securing cannabis-oriented sponsors for Grow Up in Kind fairs have been straightforward, but organizers want to level up. Kynes Wolf notes how securing sponsorships with mainstream brands can be challenging. Non-cannabis brands should be open to sponsoring these kind of events because at the end of the day, the people who attend our fairs aren't just consuming cannabis; they have other hobbies and interests that are important to these brands. They buy food.
I love woodworking. I buy lots and lots of tools.
Yeah.
So it would be great to have some tools there. Things like that. Sure. I love that. That's a great idea. Rowe is also disheartened to watch major brands fail to materialize at cannabis events. Then again, he isn't surprised. Whether legal or not, cannabis still has a stigma attached to it, especially for Canadian branches of major American brands, since the U.S. still hasn't legalized cannabis. Also today, we're seeing so many cannabis companies losing money and going bankrupt. So why would brands want to be attached to a struggling industry? All valid points.
But
I see
by getting involved, the people that attend these events, these cannabis events, are the same people that attend other events.
And I can see like Coke and Pepsi and those kind of companies supplying because people drink. Water companies. There's so many
sporting teams, whatever. Yeah, just like regular advertising.
It will happen.
Yeah, hopefully at some point. You would think that the people who there's that munchy crowd, right? So why wouldn't Lay's?
Yeah, Lay's chips. That's perfect.
Yeah, makes sense to me. It's all right. Last story of the day. Let's get her up here, and this one comes to us from Political, and the headline on it says, "Kids are buying pot like drugs from corner stores. Lawmakers want to stop it."
Mississippi is confronting an unlikely new drug scourge, hemp. Intoxicating hemp-derived products, which aren't subject to testing or packaging requirements, are being sold at gas stations, corner stores, and other retail establishments all over the Magnolia State. Kids aren't even barred from buying mind-altering items like gummies and vapes that contain forms of THC that are similar to the psychoactive ingredient in cannabis.
Principals are complaining to me that kids are vaping Delta 8, Delta 10 all day and are high all day, and they get it at the gas station. Mississippi State Rep Lee Yancey says in an interview. Where marijuana contains a type of THC known as Delta 9, the hemp-derived products Yancey referred to contain similar compounds, all of which can get users a euphoric high.
State lawmakers and regulators are now scrambling to fill the void created by a lack of federal legal clarity. worried about the risk of a completely unregulated drug industry that's sprung up in plain sight in more than 20 states, ranging from Florida to Ohio, California to Mississippi. Legislatures are proposing laws aimed at putting stricter guardrails around intoxicating hemp products or banning them altogether. The spread of freewheeling drug gray markets like the one in Mississippi is an unintended consequence of Congress legalizing hemp under the 2018 Farm Bill, hoping it would be a boon to struggling farmers. But the nascent industry for non-intoxicating products like CBD oil and hemp milk has floundered.
Instead, an increasingly large share of hemp being legally grown extract figures are impossible to pin down exact figures, is now converted into legal hazy psychoactive products. The proliferation has led to growing concerns that this largely unregulated industry presents a looming public health crisis, with both children and adults assessing drugs that face little of rigorous testing requirements and purchasing limits that typically apply to state legal cannabis products. More than 1 in 10 high school seniors reported using Delta 8 products in a recent national survey, according to the study published earlier this week in the Journal of American Medical Association. You would think if there's no law that, the people would be smart enough to, not sell it to the kids, they sort of put their own regulations in.
I find that most people don't give a crap what they sell. As long as they make money on it, that's it. It doesn't matter.
That's too bad. It's like the vapor lounge industry in Toronto, 10 years ago. There was no laws or regulations for or against them, but people still did things, such as making sure people were of age to enter, put, ventilation systems in, so on and so forth.
I think a lot of that was, it was a little more illegal back then than this is, because obviously this is completely legal now. It doesn't mean it's right. Yeah, it doesn't mean it's right, but it's legal. When we did the vape tour, most of them were illegal, and they were trying to, put it as we are responsible. It would hope. I think that's a difference, right?
Yeah, I would hope that the store owners or whatever would sort of use some common sense.
I would hope so too, but it's proven over and over again that that's
not
the case.
Yeah. All right.
Some public health experts are even warning that the Wild West hemp market possesses a threat to cannabis legalization experiment that's spread rapidly across the country over the past decade. The longer cannabinoid hemp remains unregulated federally, the more likely it is that we will see a major public health event that could put the entirety of legalization at risk, said Gillian Schnauer, an executive director of the Cannabis Regulators Association. Regulation is urgently needed to ensure a baseline for consumer safety across the industry.
So there you go. It says they say that because it's federally illegal, this problem's happening, but it's federally illegal for cannabis, but yet the states have got, they've got laws in place that control that. No one seems to be complaining about kids smoking cannabis in the classroom, but state officials reining in the market have repeatedly sparked lawsuits from hemp companies arguing that they run afoul of federal law, with courts often halting implementation of tougher rules while the legal disputes play out. And the proposals to curb the proliferation of intoxicating hemp-derived products are increasingly pitting legal cannabis companies, which must navigate a bewildering state-by-state patchwork of rules and regulations due to federal illegality, against their one-time allies in the hemp industry.
And what you're seeing here is cannabis interests lobbying legislatures to decimate the hemp-derived cannabinoid retail industry, said Jim Higdon, who's the co-founder of Cornbread Hemp, a Kentucky-based company that sells non-psychoactive products like CBD gummies nationwide. That's what this is about. Mississippi launched this medical cannabis program just over a year ago after lawmakers overwhelmingly passed legislation championed by Yancey and Republican State Senator Kevin Blackwell.
The framework that they back combines relatively liberal rules for cannabis businesses that are no caps on the number of licenses, which fairly strict requirements for patients to enroll in the program. The upshot in the first year of operations is the market badly out of alignment. There are nearly 400 licensed medical cannabis businesses, including 192 dispensaries and about 35 100,000 patients. That's roughly one dispensary for every 182 patients. In contrast, Florida has more than 1,400 patients for each licensed medical shop, and Arizona has about 2,500 patients for every dispensary, and Canada has about 230,000 per each of its medical dispensaries because there's only one in Canada.
Wow. And we're out of time.
That's all right. We can finish up the story here.
Okay.
There we are. The bottom line. Go ahead.
There are too many businesses and too few patients for Mississippi weed entrepreneurs to make much money. Those challenges have been exacerbated by the proliferation of businesses selling intoxicating hemp-derived products that anyone can purchase without the hassle or cost of enrolling in the medical program. They have this wild west of intoxicating hemp products. Nobody really knows where they came from, said Nate Steele, who's the Chief Compliance and Government Affairs Officer for Good Day Farm, which has 5 dispensaries in Mississippi, as well as cannabis operations in Arkansas, Missouri, and Louisiana. It's essentially a black market in open sight.
Yancey recently introduced legislation aiming at addressing the issue. It would require all intoxicating cannabis products to be sold through licensed medical marijuana dispensaries and limit sales to people the age of at least 21 years of age. The bill defines intoxicating products as any item that contains at least 0.5 milligrams of total THC or any package with at least 2.5 milligrams of THC. So here you go. Make the proposals.
And
that proposal immediately sparked opposition from the hemp industry officials who argued the threshold for defining intoxicating products is far too low and that the legislation would disseminate their businesses.
These numbers are arbitrary and just pulled out from thin air, said Patrick Schatzer, Regulatory Affairs Senior Manager for Your CBD Store, a nationwide chain that has 5 outlets in Mississippi. They're just arbitrarily low. The U.S. Hemp Roundtable, a national trade group, immediately issued an alert calling on its allies to lobby Mississippi lawmakers to oppose the proposal. Jonathan Miller, the group's general counsel, said members are in favor of reasonable regulation to address dangerous products being sold to kids, pointed to Kentucky's regulations for hemp-derived products as a potential model, but that proposals like Mississippi's go well beyond what's necessary to protect public health.
Why don't they just make it so they can still be sold in the stores, but still keep it that it has to be 21 or older?
Makes sense to me.
Makes sense to me. This is really serving a need out there, Miller said, of intoxicating hemp-derived products. It's been a lifeline for hemp farmers. Mississippi is far from alone in confronting the issue right now. Yeah, they're not.
In Florida, lawmakers passed legislation aimed at cracking down on intoxicating hemp-derived products during the final days of this year's legislative session, despite industry warnings that it would decimate their business. The measure limits THC concentration for hemp products to 5 milligrams per serving and 50 milligrams per container. Missouri lawmakers are similarly weighing legislation that would treat hemp-derived products essentially the same as cannabis, which is legal for adults to purchase and possess in the state. That would mean they could only be sold to licensed cannabis shops and only to people at least 21 years old.
And in Tennessee, proposed testing regulations issued in December by the state agriculture department sparked a massive outcry from hemp industry officials who argued that the rules would imperil their businesses by effectively banning many of the products they currently sell. Every day, I feel like there's a new action in the state legislature that we are addressing, says Michael Bronstein, president of the American Trade Association of Cannabis and Hemp, which supports tougher regulations for hemp-derived products. If consumers do not know what is in the products that they are receiving, then we have failed as an industry and in the larger legalization movement. If Mississippi's Yancey bill clears a pair of House committees and is poised for a floor vote. Yeah, this keeps going. This is a long article, isn't it? But it looks like they're going to make some changes. Hopefully, I'm just going to shut it down. Hopefully, it gets to that point that they can come up with an agreement on things, and get it out there. It makes both the hemp farmer and the lawmakers happy instead of forcing something down their throats.
It makes sense. I wish they have to change it. They have to take cannabis off the list completely, in the U.S. Otherwise, they're not going to have the regulations they need down there.
Well, we up here would like to see it gone off the CDSA and then be able to go from there instead of having all these things that we have to deal with now. But
it's changing slowly but surely.
Yeah. It just takes time. Takes time. Well, anything else you want to get on before I wrap things up?
No, I'm doing great.
All right. Okay, good stuff.
Happy birthday to my wife, Cindy.
There you go. Happy birthday to your wife, Cindy. And a happy belated to my sister, whose birthday was yesterday.
Happy birthday.
Yes. All right. For the Legacy420.com news desk, that's the Pace News Report for March the 14th. Thanks to Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, Legacy420.com, Limestone City Hydroponics. And in closing, thanks to everybody for tuning in and watching the program. And don't forget to educate, medicate, and do not incarcerate. You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
When you have a pain that's reached its peak, Legacy for 20, it's so unique. If organic cannabis is what you seek, here's your trusted partner 7 days a week. Suppository salves, vapes and drops, topicals, edibles, infused pop. Just when life seems like it ain't easy, at Legacy 420, enjoy a pop freezy. Lab tested products, make them the GOAT. Legacy 420 out on your road.
Legacy 420 in Tyndonega Mohawk territory. Indigenous organic cannabis at its finest.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420. We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.